Something very useful to know in Spanish is that whenever you're saying thank you, you use por. So it's just a rule. You don't even have to think about it. And in polite conversation and interaction with people, you're going to use this a lot. Thank you for this, thank you for whatever. For example, thanks for helping me today. This for would be por. It's always gracias por whatever. Gracias por whatever. For example, again, thanks for visiting us would be gracias por. So this one is nice and quick, easy, but incredibly useful. So thanks for whatever it may be is always gracias por. This next one I've titled duration of time. Now with para, we talked about deadlines and dates. For example, Tuesday or in 5 minutes time, tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Those are all points of time in the future, and we use para. But if we're talking about duration of time, we use por. So this is something that we're really going to have to pay attention to. For example, I study every night for 3 hours. Here we have a duration of time, 3 hours. This is not a deadline. This is not a date, right? This is some kind of duration of time, a length of time. So for that reason, we wouldn't use para, we would use por. We're here on holidays for 1 week. Again, this is not a deadline. It's not a specific date in time, right? It's a length of time, a duration of time. So we would use por here. Another example, for how many hours did you jog yesterday? Again, we're asking this duration of time, how many hours? So up front here, we would use por. Last example would be, he works for 16 hours a day. Here again, we're talking about a length of time, a duration. So instead of para, we would use por. Payments or exchanges. Look at this sentence. I paid $30 for this shirt. Here, we're talking about money and payments, and typically with that, we tend to use por. So this for here would be por. In a way, I called it payments exchanges because we're exchanging $30 for this shirt. And so we need to use por here and not para. It's an exchange. This one, how much did you pay for it? So here again, we're talking about money. We're talking about payments, financial things, right? A transaction. So we would use por and not para. It's just something that Spanish does. What can you give me for this gold watch? So here we are offering an exchange, right? I have this thing and I'm asking what you can give me in exchange for it. So again, instead of using para, we would use por. This one, we don't really need to explain too deeply into it. Anytime you're talking about money, okay, I paid $30 for this shirt, or asking how much did you pay for the car, and is it possible to exchange this these shoes for a size that's one bigger. Any of these things of payments or exchanges, we use por and not para. If you remember at the beginning, we started off with por, talking about along, by, through, things like that. And this is another, number 6, another very useful usage of por. We're talking now about maths, multiplication, numbers, units of measure. For example, in English you would say 3 by 3, but multiplication in Spanish is por, so it would be tres por tres. So anytime we're using multiplication, it's going to be por. Another example would be, say, 90 kilometers an hour or 90 miles an hour. If we wanted to, we could put in, say, per here. This is por in Spanish. So when we're referring to speed limits, things like that, we use por, not para. This one is a little bit more abstract. I'm telling you for the third time. This is why I labeled this as kind of maths, numbers, because here we're talking about the third time, second time, first time, 10th time, whatever it may be. We're going to be using por here and not para, because again, we're referring to this thing of numbers, maths, unit of measures, multiplication, all those things are going to imply por. Here's another idea of what I'm talking about. 1 tablespoon per liter. Say it's in a recipe. In Spanish, this is por. So it doesn't matter if it's 90 kilometers per hour or 1 tablespoon per liter. This per is always por in Spanish. So this idea of maths, numbers, units of measure, we have 3 por 3. 90 kilometers per hour would be por hour, or 1 tablespoon per liter. Again, we would use por here, or say something like 2 times a week, or 4 the third time. Any of these numbers is going to push us into using por for 4. This next one is very useful. What we're talking about in English is that when you say the word by, but that implies by way of or by means of, we're going to use por. For example, I came by train. This by is implying by way of or by means of. Now, in English, we don't say that. It'd be quite old-fashioned, or sounds quite old-fashioned to say that, but it is being implied. So in those situations, in Spanish, they would say por, whatever it may be, train, plane, car, whatever. So I came by way of train or by means of train. This is por. Here's another example. I sent it by airmail. So this by, this could be I sent it by way of airmail. I sent it by means of airmail. Here we have por. They arrived by plane this morning. So they arrived by way of plane this morning. Here we have por. I don't like traveling by car on long journeys. So we have I don't like traveling by way of or by means of car on long journeys. So here we have por. They talked all night on the phone. Now here we're not using the word by, we're using on the phone, but this is still implying by means of. So they talked all night by means of the phone. Here in Spanish, they put por teléfono. So this is another, you'll find yourself using this actually quite a lot. So by train, by airmail, arrived by plane, arrived by car, traveling by car or ferry, whatever it may be, talking on the phone, or say even shopping on the internet, because that is by way of the internet. This is something that you'll get the hang of with a little practice, but these are all instances where in Spanish we're throwing in por. Our next usage is going to be entitled done by or authored by. Now we have to be a little bit careful here. If we were saying something simple like a book by Kerouac, say Jack Kerouac, the beat writer, then we would just use un de. So it would be un libro de whoever, Kerouac. Or say a painting by Rembrandt. Well, we would just use de here for by. But if we were saying something like this book was written by Jack Kerouac, then we would throw in por here. Or this painting was done by Monet, it would be por Monet. It doesn't even have to be a person, it could be an institution. It's a guide published by Harvard University. So it would be por here. If we remove this, it's a guide by Harvard University, then this would simply be de. But as soon as we throw in published by, or written by, released by, painted by, written by, then in Spanish they throw in por here for the author. One last example for you. Here we have a dress designed by Versace. So this would be por Versace. But if we remove this designed and simplified it to simply a dress by Versace, it would be de Versace. But because we have designed by, now, in Spanish, they would throw in por Versace here. When we come to doing our examples in Spanish, you're going to see this a lot more clearly. For now, I just want to try to get you to understand the concepts before we actually go into doing it in and seeing it in real life, as it were, in Spanish. Now we have a few more general things that we can do with por as well. For example, general times. In the afternoons, in the evenings, at night, kind of like through the night, or in the mornings, all these things we use por. It kind of like relates to he's around here or it's around here somewhere. That general thing of in the afternoons, in the evenings, at night time, in the mornings, we use por. And we also have a lot of idiomatic expressions, and I'll just give them quickly to you now. We have por ejemplo, for example. You hear that a lot, you use that a lot. Por ejemplo. Por favor, we already know. It's please. Por supuesto means of course. Por fin means finally. Por aquí means kind of around here. And por allí would mean around there or over there. So we have over here or around here, and over there or around there. These are all expressions that don't change in Spanish. It's always por ejemplo, never para ejemplo. For example, here, por favor, you never hear para favor, right? That would sound very strange even to us students learning Spanish. If someone said para favor, instantly it would sound wrong to your ears. It's always por favor. So we have por ejemplo, por favor, por supuesto, por fin, por aquí, por allí. So this video now has been quite long, I imagine, on por, but we're going to start to compare and contrast now por with para, and this is where the point where you'll really start to learn and develop your own intuition for knowing when to choose por and when to choose para. So I'll see you in the next video.